Hello everyone and welcome to my first YouTube video. Today we are going to be running through the Australian dollar against the US dollar analysis. I've actually got a current live trade going on here. So just a bit of a video journal, where I will show where my stop loss is, why my stop loss is there, my risk in pips, what I'm looking to gain in pips, so my risk to reward. And yeah, so let's jump right into it. So here we are on the Australian dollar against the US dollar, the weekly chart. Now, we have seen the Australian dollar over the past few weeks gaining a lot of strength. Now, this has been a bit of a range of a very weak US dollar. So it's been fairly easy-ish for the majors to gain a lot of strength. And then in the midst of this, we've had, like for the Australian dollar, we've had some good retail sales data out, which has just helped this thing boost. We've had some good comments, some hawkish comments. But now what I'm looking for on this Australian dollar is a sort of pullback, because we've had just this big pop, and I mean, if I just zoom out, since this was a 2016 high, and we've just this was in the month of April of last year, and we have just ever since just banged our head against this 77,500, which had become a resistance level. Now, every time we banged our head against it, we actually made a slight, a higher low each time. So therefore we built up pressure, and the pressure had been released on this explosive move in the past few weeks. But to continue this strong trend, we would like to see a pullback. Now, I believe it would be nice to see a pullback towards this 77,500. I haven't taken the trade from the weekly chart or anything. It is a swing position, but it is it's a mid-swing position. But what I'm kind of just doing some top-down analysis of how what we could see getting there. Now you can see here we've had like a 3-pin formation with some strong sort of wicks to the upside. You can see how the wicks sit to the bodies. They're not like this sort of close here where they're strong. There's not much wick at the top. So therefore this means that the price had been sitting at this level, but then has sold off, and then it had rallied, made all the way to these highs, and then sold off, and then the last week actually had sold off and creating this 3-pin formation, which is a sort of lower time frames means a inverse head and shoulders. Now I do actually have this as this level as a weekly support level currently, because last week we actually fractionally, you can see where we closed, and we actually pierced through, but we actually rallied back up and closed. So therefore this is still a weekly support level, because that this week has not closed. If this weekly candle, which is currently live, closes anywhere below this level, then this handle of 0.79250 will become weekly resistance. If we see a rally to the upside and a push higher, then it remains as a support. But let's scroll down and go through. So here we have the weekly. So I've got my 3-pin formation and this sort of large spinning top, sort of hanging man sort of thing. So now we are looking, and the current week is still live, but we are sitting as like a spinning top. So we're kind of getting to a point now where price is going, okay, we've had a big rally, we need to release some sort of pressure at some point. Let's start selling off some Aussie dollars. So if we jump down to the daily, we can see here just actually how sort of range bound and how indecisive this market's starting to become. How we can see we had this very nice strong candle, we rallied, but we whipped right back down. We gained some strength, some nice close daily candle closes, but we whipped back down and not been able to breach the highs. I have a trade which had been executed off of 4 hours, so I will show you the setup, but just to show you that there's some spinning tops, yesterday we had a very indecisive spinning top. We have sort of another spinning top here, slash sort of gravestone sort of doji, where the wick is to the higher of the upside there to the lower. But let's jump down to, I'll show you the setup and the risk to reward. So here we have the 4 hour time frame. And now with what I had been looking at last week, I was looking at a higher Australian dollar price. Now, I had this trend line drawn in here, and we actually had the first bounce, we came back up, we had the second bounce, and now we actually came back and tested this third bounce. Plus we had this 4 hour sort of minor resistance level in here. You can see we've touched it numerous times, and we came back up, and I actually went long off this candle here. Sort of a strong close as we retested this level, and I was looking for this as a pop move. Now we consolidated, and we did actually break above, but we were sharply bought back below. Now this was just over non-farm payrolls last week. It is actually the second week of August 2017. So I knew that I was going into a riskier position, and I managed my risk going into this trade, but we were swiftly bought below on the non-farm payrolls, coming out with some better figures, plus the Reserve Bank of Australia saying they don't want the Australian dollar appreciating too much in strength, as it would cause a higher inflation and talks of interest rate hikes, which they say would be a bad time for the economy to grow currently. And then so we actually saw this break below. Now then we had a rally back up, and we actually perfectly retested this trend line. So now we've kind of had a breakout retest, and now we're looking for this sort of continuation. I took a position yesterday off this 4 hour candle close here. If I can zoom in a fraction for you. So this candle here. Now this was I read this as a gravestone doji. Now we can see that we've had another one here where the price is sold back through, and I liked this candle because we had pierced up through this weekly support / resistance area zone, and was looking for lower prices. Now, so I'd taken short, and price came up, formed another gravestone doji while I slept last night, and then had a sell-off, but we weren't able to sustain. We did break this low here, but we weren't able to sustain this, and we actually closed more or less, I mean, definitely 50% of the strength in the candle, but that I am, keeping a close eye on. But for my stop loss, I actually have a 75 pip stop, Now I'm 30 pips above this 4 hour 4 hour resistance level where it's acted quite nicely. So if price does come up and retest this, then it could fall back down as a reaction if we saw some news spike or something. And then I'm actually still 10 pips above these highs. Now, for my reason for my stop is if we did see price come up and then break this, then in my eyes, I would want to be out of the trade, because if I look at this and envision price up here, just the market is going to be very, very choppy. I wouldn't want to hold this trade any further. I mean, if it breaks these sorts of highs, we could come up and retest these highs, we could retest these highs, but the strength in retesting these, it might be just one big, large candle and then a sell-off back to a pullback off the back of some fundamental news or something. So I'm happy with my stop placement. I've actually got a 2% risk on this trade of my account. 75 pip stop, and my target is at 77,500 as this monthly support, looking for 163 pips. So my risk to reward is 1 to 2.16, so it's basically 1 to 2. So what I am continuing to monitor today and going into the UK and US session tonight is I am looking for price to pull back further, and I'm really monitoring this level around here, around this 78,800 level. And I've snapped on just this level for now, as we have seen some reaction from it. And I do believe that if we do see price back down here, we could either see a little pullback, potentially back up to this weekly resistance level, and then a continuation of this, or a continuation to retest this before a break. And I think if we saw something like that, we could see a sharp, quick sell-off towards this monthly support, or we could see or we could just see a strong break and close below before moving lower. Like I said, I mean, at this stage, there's nothing that is, there's a trade there and it makes sense to myself, so I have taken a trade, but it's not super clear cut yet. I mean, things like if this had closed really nicely and the price had closed around down here, or at the end of this wick, or I mean at these lows, you know, it would have had a lot more strength. But it's sort of similar to this candle here, where we've come into this zone again, and we've snapped back and consolidated before moving lower, snapped back, consolidating. Once again, we're either going to move lower, we're going to move higher. It's you've got to read what's in the market at that current time and run with it. So I will continue to update this trade as we move further, and I will update once we get to either could get stopped out, or if we move lower towards this this level, and I will give an update on if I'm going to add to the position, where I could trail my stop to cover some risk, and yeah, I will be in touch. Thanks.